He's prettier than both my daughters. But he knows how to fight. He's young, but he knows how to lead. He didn't have to come to Hardhome. He came because he needs us. And we need him. My ancestors would spit on me if I broke bread with a crow.
So would mine, but fuck 'em, they're dead.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Jason.
And I'm David.
And I am Mr. Blog. And this is Game of Microphones, Episode 12.
You know, I have to admit, I thought it was a little bit of a boring episode this week. I stopped watching about 30 minutes in. Did I miss
liar.
anything?
This show just isn't going anywhere. Nothing is happening.
I'm out.
This episode was spectacular. It had, oh my God, it had so much to dig your teeth into. It was so wonderful. And that final half an hour, holy crap. Just wow.
It was interesting how it was a half an hour like, all right, let's do the Jon Snow show now.
Oh, pretty much.
Forget everything else.
It was
like that.
Often with, when they've treated such a big battle as a whole show, like they did the Battle on the Wall. And this one snuck up on you as a watcher because it just seemed like it was going to be one segment among many, and then it turned into something very different.
And I loved that Jon was giving his speech that we've kind of heard different variations on ever since probably episode 1 of, there's a threat. It's the White Walkers. They're coming. We need to band together. And I'm thinking, yep, that'll probably happen maybe at the end of season 6 or beginning season 7. And it was like, nope, it's right now.
No, I mean, this episode started off great. It got better, and then it just became what may be one of the best episodes of the series. I mean, I was floored. And the fact that we'd had hints of this for years now, The last time we saw a White Walker was what? The final episode of season 2, I think?
No. We saw the White Walker turn the little baby into another White Walker.
That one brief scene. But as far as anything menacing beyond taking children, this is the first time. And this is the first time we've seen everything in action. Yeah. And
it felt so cool to just. Usually they're so fleeting, and I think that's been on purpose. In fact, I heard they shot more scenes of this White Walker King guy in season 4, but they took them out because they wanted him to be more mysterious. But now you get these really just long glances, like really putting them in our face, which was really awesome. I thought.
Yeah.
If you accept the horror movie convention that what is unseen is more menacing, and they've left these guys mostly unseen with little hints for 4 years, and it really worked. But that also only works if it pays off in the end.
Yes.
Like if we finally had gotten to see these guys and they weren't that cool or weren't that interesting, but I mean, they were maybe some of the coolest, most menacing, most spooky villains we've ever seen in anything.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You're right. A huge payoff.
And the first time we meet them is the prologue to episode 1, season 1.
Yeah. And when I saw that, I thought, I was sort of hoping for an episode like this, maybe that we just saw last night, maybe by episode 3 or 4.
Yeah,
I'm like, cool, it's going to be zombies. But as David just said, it's like, it's even greater when they make you wait for it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a long foreplay with this show.
Oh, and I just had the biggest climax of all time. That was just phenomenal.
It is called Hardhome. Okay, this is the All Guy episode, people. All right, well, we're kind of already into it, but let's go ahead and get into our top 5 highlights of Game of Thrones Season 5, Episode 8, Hardhome. We kind of already gave our general thoughts, but is there anything else you guys want to say before we get into the top 5?
I do like to give a rating. So
okay, go for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to give this 4.9 arrow-pierced blue-eyed zombie skulls.
Very nice.
One of the best episodes ever, and I think that's the highest rating I've ever given an episode. It's pretty great.
I would have to go with a 4.9 as well. Absolutely. This was near perfection. Near perfection.
I mean, the end was so good. And I have to say, and I'll get into it more, there were certain parts that I thought were not great. You know, for this show, if in general, great. I mean, just about everything I see on the show I think is damn good. But by Game of Thrones standards, some of the not so great. But the end just shot it into the stratosphere for me. So,
indeed.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it enables you to be forgiving a little bit for some other areas where they were just furthering the plot or giving a little exposition.
Yeah. All right, who wants to go first?
Jason, why don't you? You never do. Go for it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start right off with the big battle. It's my favorite battle so far in the series, of course, probably goes without saying. But that is also saying a lot because the battle at Castle Black was amazing, and this was better.
Agreed.
Kit Harington, who plays Jon Snow, said this. It was about a 20-minute scene. It took a month to film, and so that's less than a minute a day of filming for this thing. When the guy looked through the gate and saw the zombie running at him, and then you see the arm burst through.
Yeah.
I was just like, yes, this is so good. I thought the whole thing had this sort of Sam Raimi-esque quality to it.
Agreed. Yeah, I can see
kind
that.
of, stuttery and jarring, and I love that. It kind of reminded me of Jason of the Argonauts too, with the skulls and a bit like Army of Darkness. Feel free to jump in too.
Not maybe as cheesy a claymation as that, but it was a little claymation-y, especially the whites.
In a good way. I mean, like disorienting,
Of the entire battle scene, though, what about that moment when all of those whites come tumbling off the cliff like lemmings?
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going like, what the fuck? Is this just a massive call? What are they doing? And then all of a sudden when they jump up and they just start, they come right back. You're like, holy fuck, no, that's, oh my God,
He was just staring at first, and I was like, it's raining zombies, maybe you should run. And then I'm sort of like, well, they look kind of damaged and they're not moving. It's okay. Oh, wait.
It's raining Zeds. Hallelujah, it's raining Zeds. No, that was
amazing.
So amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing just for the sight of the lemming-like raining, God. And then kind of not sure what was going to happen, and then you see them start to get up.
Oh, but what about that horrible pause, right? When they close those gates and you hear everybody banging, oh, let us in. Then all of a sudden, silence. You're just like,
which sort of didn't quite make sense. Like, what happened? Why were they all suddenly far away from the gate?
Dude, who knows? You got this, the Night's King who can sit there and just bring everybody back to life at the end. It's like, all right, but anything can happen at this point, It was
a horrible idea to leave anybody out there because, I mean, who's thinking straight? But those people are just going to end up being against you in a minute.
Well, and that was the exclamation point at the end.
Yeah.
That was really the, think you won, huh?
It was a really bad idea. And it was interesting that the Magyar of Thun, who is maybe the most fearless character in the show, and a minute ago he's refusing to make peace even for the most warlike of reasons, and all of a sudden he was scared. He was like, close the gate.
Oh shit.
Oh no, I cannot even begin to say how exciting that final entire sequence was. It was just remarkable. I mean, they got so many great shots in terms of just all of those whites converging on the wall, or even when the wall did finally topple. I mean, all these just great little moments. And man, massive shout out to One Weg Wendar One, the giant. I was so happy to see him. It's not even funny. That was
his scenes were so great, just swatting them around and trying to get them off his back.
Yeah,
and it's some of the best effects we've seen in the show. It just looked really great.
We finally got a giant in the daytime, and we hadn't seen that before. And the way that he was just stomping on the whites is like, that's just so great. I got into pure, unadulterated fanboy heaven right then. I was just sitting back with a big old smile on my face going, oh my God, this is spectacular. What a scene. And you're right. Best battle Game of Thrones has ever done. Blackwater was fantastic. Castle Black was fantastic. But this, no, best one. Absolutely. Best one.
And you mentioned, at the end, he raises the dead up. Carsey, is that her name?
Yeah, Carsey.
Her eyes turn blue. And it just becomes immediately apparent. Well, Jon Snow went up there to get a bunch of wildlings. He got a few, but the White Walkers got many, many more.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a loss. I mean, it was a win only in that he survived. And they got some, yeah. We'll see next week.
I think they got quite a lot.
But that village was decimated, and there were so many dead people that weren't dead when the White Walkers first arrived. And it just goes to show that the White Walkers have this really menacing tool, which is that anytime they kill any of your people, their army gets bigger. Yeah. So that's really cool. Just more, I have more about the fight. So I love this. They're called Wights, Wights.
Yes.
I might call them zombies sometimes because that's the kind of guy I am. But they're scrambling through the dirt under the gate and just breaking it apart with no concern for their own physical health or safety. I love that. And the sounds. Oh, I actually captured some of the sounds. I'm going to play an effect here. Here we go.
Nice.
The good sounds, Yeah. Really, really great. The kids were really disturbing, and I felt when I saw that scene where Carsey is looking at the kids and the kids look back and you can see that one's kid's ribs and everything. I thought, man, Walking Dead could take a lesson from that in particular. They just look so like, oh my God, they're scary,
Yeah. And I do have to mention Carsey. The actress's name is Brigitte Hort Sorensen. I believe she's Danish or something. She was in Pitch Perfect 2, which I just saw a couple weeks ago.
She's the bad guy, right?
Kommissar, that is her name. She is the German a cappella singer in Das Sound Machine. And she is freaking hilarious. I loved her in that. When I realized that's who it was when I was seeing this, I'm like, I am in love. She is just amazing. So
she was great in this.
Yeah, she really was. Really was.
Yeah. Another thing I loved, like this battle is filled with great moments that just made you go, oh my gosh. And seeing all the mounted White Walkers up on the hill like generals.
Yeah.
Watching the battle. It was great because just how still and menacing, but also it's like, wow, they're coordinating this, that was awesome. And then I loved how Jon Snow looked up at them and thought for a second, and he goes, get the dragon glass. He's like, this is an opportunity to try and harm these guys, not only to save yourself, but I think it's just his moment. He volunteered to go to the wall and protect the land from the dangers from the north. And this is sort of his purpose and what he's made for. And so, he sprung into action, he's like the most heroic figure in this whole show. For sure, I would say.
And we finally learn what makes Valyrian steel as special as it is.
Mm-hmm.
This was a big giant question mark. I know it's been speculated on because it was forged from dragon fire and whatnot, but to know now that it has the same effect on a White Walker as dragon glass, that was just so cool to see.
Yeah.
Not only, to see
the first scene when the swords connected and they both looked surprised.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Such a Star Wars moment right there. I'm like, oh God, I was so excited throughout that entire thing.
Because it was great to see that the White Walker that came down into the battle, just how when his weapon connected with any other weapon, they would shatter.
Yeah.
And so you kind of got, oh, that's what happens. But then it didn't happen. And speaking of that, it was so great when Jon was trying to get the dragon glass and that walker just kind of walked through. His movements were so slow.
Oh, strolled right through that inferno, man. He's
fire,
like, fire doesn't bother me at all, man.
And then what about them sort of sizing each other up at the end? What did you guys think of that?
What, you mean with the Night's King and Jon staring down each other? Well, a lot of people, we've heard a lot of some mail that we've gotten has referenced it, and I've heard it out there in the internet that basically the come at me, bro. Although I've also heard the twist on it, which is come at me, crow. You know, do you even Sith crow? You know, like he kind of had a Darth Maul thing going with the little pointy spikes.
To me, it was great. It was a pregnant moment.
I love it.
It made me feel like Jon Snow is elevated even more. Like, oh, it just felt like, oh, he's the contender for these guys, you know? I mean, I don't know if that's true, but that's what it felt like in that moment, at least. Like, this is what they perceive as possibly the one threat to them.
Yes, I agree with you. It looked like the Night King was sizing up Jon Snow as maybe their one greatest enemy. Like they were assessing him in that way. I wonder if they were also assessing him as a future White Walker.
Oh, he'd be good.
He would be a good White Walker, yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned the name Night's King, so let's tell people, by the way, HBO accidentally revealed this guy's name last year in some kind of promotional thing, Night's King. And so that let book readers maybe know something about him, maybe not, but we'll save that for the book talk section.
Okay.
If you want to. Yeah, is that cool?
That's fine. I mean, actually, that is... Yeah. Last year, book readers got spoiled with the presence of the Night's King. And this is a situation where I'm just saying the name, like we didn't know if they've never said that name in the show, but HBO mentioned it in connection with this character in some kind of promotional material. So now we know, oh, this is probably the Night's King. And with that information, then you can go back to the book and connect it with something that's in the book. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about it in the book talk. Sure.
Cool.
Sure.
Okay. That's all I had to say about the battle.
Well, that was a lot. David, why don't you go? What's your number one? No. I mean, look, that was an amazing thing. So,
I think we all agree that the battle was the main event. So I'll just go on and add a few more details that I noted. I thought one of the greatest things about the battle was the lead up to it before it started. Just the ominous, that avalanche of snow started coming down. The fog was blowing in. The dogs were barking, which is never a good sign ever. Nope. Once the first sign that something was going to go wrong is when Carsey told her kids, "I'll be right back. Don't worry." That's right. Right, in true Walking Dead fashion. But it was a great slow burn, and they let it play for a while. I mean, it wasn't like 5 seconds and then it happened. It was a good 5 minutes of what exactly is going to happen here. So that was great. And I thought the zombies themselves were great. These are not slow lumbering zombies. They're fast, and it's not clear to me how you kill them. Because some of them had, But so otherwise, you would have to get fire on them in some sort of group way.
I don't think a brain shot works.
Yeah, no. Which we I'm sure we'll see that in a future battle, that they're going to plan some way of getting fire to the group of them, because there doesn't seem to be any other real reliable way to stop them other than chopping them up. Or a stomp
from a giant.
Yes.
Well, you know what would really come in handy would be, I don't know, a big dragon breathing a bunch of fire on these things. That would have been really handy at this point. If only you could find a dragon somewhere. I don't know.
Right. So, and this is one more thing I'll touch on in book talk, but back in the Targaryen glory days, there were a lot of dragons.
Yeah.
So even now, even if we can get Dany into this fight somehow, there's only 3. Is that enough? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I guess we'll find out. Like you both, I liked the giant. Definitely some zombie kills of the week. With the giant stomping on some of those guys, swatting them off like flies, throwing them into the ocean, hitting them with a flaming tree trunk. It was all awesome. I also loved when the giant said, "What the fuck are you looking at?"
I loved that. One. I love 1-1. I really do. I loved him in the book, and I love to see him finally depicted. I'm just like, oh, I was one happy camper.
I like that. Yeah, I think the only 2 things he said were Tormund to show his support.
Yeah.
And then he didn't even say, "What the fuck are you looking at?" He said, "The fuck you looking at?"
Yeah, exactly. And lastly, I thought, as far as an individual fight goes, the Jon Snow and the White Walker is the best individual fight we've had, even with apologies to the Viper and the Mountain and some other great duels, Bronn and Ser Vardis. There have been some great individual duels, but this was a great one. Just the look of surprise on the White Walker's face when the Valyrian steel stopped his ice lance, and then he ended up being a shower of ice cubes. It was just great.
And I loved how the guy, when he struck Jon Snow's chest, it looked like there was more damage than just the force of the blow. You know, and then he got thrown out onto his face, and it was just, the whole thing was great the way they staged it.
I gotta say, that whole thing got me so excited. It really did. Just talking about it again, I'm like, well, I'm gonna watch it.
I'm so stoked.
I'm gonna go watch it again.
I watched it 3 times already, and I'm really happy that I get to talk about it on this episode.
I was so happy I'm on this episode as well. I really am, because this is the kind of thing you expect in episode 9.
I know, that's another thing. They pulled the rug out a little bit on us. I think they're smiling about that.
Yeah, they are, the bastards. Thank you, guys. I love you for doing it.
So, anything else, David?
That basically covers my thoughts on the battle.
Okay, cool.
Well, my number 5, because I did save the battle for my number 1, because that really was my number 1. But my number 5 was something that leads up to that. And it was specifically Tormund Giantsbane's negotiating skills. I really enjoyed that conversation between he and Rattleshirt, a.k.a. Lard of Bones. That was just fantastic. Just smash, 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 dead. Okay, let's go talk. Loved it. So, and also a little, I can never pronounce his name. I think it's a Christopher Hughesu or something. Hughesu. It's the fellow who plays Tormund. He was also in the remake of the prequel to The Thing recently. I really like that actor. Always happy to see him in anything. I love that.
That guy's dead, right? He killed him.
Oh, hell yeah, he killed him.
Yeah. He's like, don't ever tell me I suck cock. I'm going to.
Well, he called him a traitor. You know, that's the thing.
Yeah,
Rattleshirt called him a traitor. Then he asked him whether or not he was sucking his cock once he got on his knees. But he didn't even have a chance to get the word.
He didn't
cock
show
out.
him any respect.
Zero respect. And, Tormund, that dude's a badass, and I really loved that entire exchange. I thought it was a great introduction to Hardhome.
And it was great that Tormund, when they asked Jon Snow, where's Mance?
Yeah.
He's like,
I killed him.
He paused for a second.
Yeah, he did.
Well, he's dead. What happened to him? And then he didn't say, he was on, he was going to be burned alive. And then, I put him out of his misery.
Shot him with an arrow.
Yeah, he wants to not, be a waffly kind of guy at all, and to his own detriment. Like, that could have got him killed, but luckily Tormund stepped in and.
Well, he's not going to throw anybody under the bus, and he's going to be very honest with these people. And I think he realizes that that's what they respect. They respect strength. They respect honesty. And that's what he's going to deliver.
And that's just who he is, too.
Yeah, it is just who he is.
Right.
So that entire scene was great. And again, Tormund steps up, and he's like, look, I don't fight for the crows, but I'm fighting to stay alive, is basically what he is saying. And
that's like the whole theme of this episode. And it's like, we need to band together because there's a greater threat. And it makes me understand why in the book series, the first book is called Game of Thrones, but the whole series is A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
And now we see some ice up in the north and some fire down in the south. And the sort of Game of Thrones seems to matter a lot less.
Oh, the Iron Throne seems to be who cares? You see how little power the person sitting on the Iron Throne actually has at the moment. So
I know, yeah.
Everybody's fighting for a pile of bullshit at this point. So
sort of. I mean, it matters, but
of course,
it just seems to matter a bit less.
What's your number 4, Jason?
Okay, so I want to talk about Daenerys and Tyrion. I think, this is another amazing moment for me. I mean, they met last episode. I didn't get to talk about that. But this episode, really, we got to see them interact. And I just love that, Daenerys' story is finally intersecting with everybody else. And I doubly love that it's a character. It's probably my favorite character on the show that gets to talk with her. I thought this segment was kind of like a lot like a job interview. It's like, so what are your qualifications?
Yeah.
But
why should I not kill you?
Yeah, it's like the job interview, except you die. You get the job or you die. and Tyrion did one of the best things that you can do in a job interview, which is to not be desperate for it, like genuinely not. When I went in for an interview at Apple Computer back in 1999, I was interviewing for this job that it was tech writing, and I thought, I really want to work at Apple, but I don't know if I want this job because it sounds boring. So I really genuinely wasn't even sure I wanted it. And I got that job, and I did it for 10 years. And I just like went in with my Hawaiian shirt, and I was just really low key, in other jobs, when you're desperate for it, they can sense it. Well, here we have Tyrion, who was ready to die. And he said, quote, I had given up on life until Varys convinced me you might be worth living for. If you chop off my head, well, my final days were interesting. And I really feel like that kind of attitude was a big part of what convinced her to keep him around. It's like, nah, he's not trying to snow me or anything. He just thinks that he might actually be of some help.
I used that technique at Genentech. I didn't.
Yeah,
I did not get the job.
True.
No, I didn't get the job.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it has to be real. You can't fake it.
It was real. I was whatever. But
and if you're upset you didn't get the job, then it wasn't real.
Nah, not upset.
But anyways, I love this meeting, and a while back I said I wanted Tyrion to make it to Daenerys and become her advisor, but I didn't want to have my heart set on it because Game of Thrones always breaks your heart. It happened, and I'm happy about it. But there is still this nagging question of whether, in steering away from the books, has this season devolved into fan service? I find myself wondering that in little moments here and there.
Don't worry about the books.
With
Don't worry about that.
Like staging this huge battle of wildlings and Night's Watchmen versus White Walkers and Whites this episode, or other things that we've talked about in the past. I mean, I'm happy with it, but I just don't want the show to lose its way and lose its edge.
Now, in all fairness, I think you were saying that because you have the knowledge that didn't necessarily happen in the book, right? That's why you would say that?
Yeah.
Okay. It actually did happen in the book, just off page.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah. And I also I would think that even if it didn't happen yet, it might still. That's kind of what I was thinking. The last thing I wanted to say about the scene, I love the line of Tyrion's that he said, killing and politics aren't always the same.
What was really nice with the Tyrion-Dany exchange that I really enjoyed was I felt that both of them were being very honest with one another and very open, and when Tyrion was laying out all of Dany's history, he laid it out for exactly where she came from. And
it was really interesting too. I didn't know that she was sold off to a warlord and kind of forgotten about until she showed up with an army.
Well, and that's how the entire series began, was her being sold off to a warlord,
Oh, that's what. Oh, he meant Khal Drogo.
Yes, he meant Khal Drogo. That's exactly how it all starts off, and because she was nothing but chattel for, a pawn for her brother's grand plan, if you remember Viserys. And the fact that, they were both kind of owning up to their faults, yet at the same time realizing they're good at the same time. Tyrion, who can be very, very cynical, is also one of the kindest peoples in this entire show. Yet he makes it very clear that there's no greater Lannister killer in the world than Tyrion Lannister, because he's killed a couple of Lannisters at this point,
She was a little touchy about it. Like he'd said she said, I'm terrible, but he's like, well, terrible in the right way. And sure. she heard it, but she was a little touchy about it.
And even her, who, although she's doing a lot of shitty things and has made some bad decisions, she wants to rule for some of the best reasons. So you got these two coming together. And at the same time, the Aerys, the Mad King, wasn't always, that was not a rule that was always terrible. And the periods of time that were good under Aerys were because of Tywin Lannister as his hand. The best time for Joffrey as king was when Tyrion Lannister was the hand. So he's making a plea for that is what he does very well, and Varys will back him up on that. So Varys comes back into the picture as well with that conversation, and they both, which is also interesting that it was Varys that Jorah was reporting to. Yet at the same time, it was Varys that kind of got Dany where she's at now.
Yeah, and she seems to not know that part, but she knows of him as a spy master. So I wondered, how does she even know his name? Like, how, we don't really, I don't think we really
she was
saw
under
that
the
part.
care of Illyrio in Pentos, and Illyrio and Varys are very close. They were working together throughout this whole thing.
But she doesn't, I know that, but she doesn't seem to know that. She only knows of him as the guy who sent Jorah to spy on him. And I don't know why she doesn't know that Varys had a relationship with Illyrio. But she does know, and I don't know how she does know that he sent Varys, or that Varys sent Jorah as a spy.
I don't know. David?
Don't know the answer to that. I mean, Jorah had plenty of time to talk to Jorah about the scene in King's Landing before she knew that he betrayed her. So, so the cast of characters could have come from him. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's made clear.
Or even Varys.
But it doesn't. I mean, doesn't. I'm not saying. Oh, I can't believe she would know that. I just don't think we saw it.
Right. Agreed.
All right. Is that all?
So I'm going to pick it up and follow up on Daenerys, as I'm calling them, for my number 4. So the couple other things I liked about this this scene or this pairing, first of all, was just Tyrion back in his element. So he's done a little bit of manipulating, since he was the Hand of the King, but this is the first time he gets to really put those skills back on full flower, which, as he said to Shay, is what he's best at. So that was fun to see. And they make a great odd couple. Yeah. With their different backgrounds and they are quite different. Dany, she's beautiful and she's very much a straight arrow, sort of in the way she approaches things. I'd say she's pretty serious. And, Tyrion takes everything sardonically, sarcastically, cynically. And we don't know what the future of them is going to be working together. We're off the novels at this point, so we don't know what direction they're going to take it. But I thought it was great to see them at least talking about working together, not quite trusting each other yet. The one thing I thought was interesting about this whole scene was kicking Jorah to the curb again.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that's a good move. Now, his grayscale may make it turn out to be a good move, and that seems that it will have some role to play in the future. But it didn't seem to me like it has to be all or nothing. Like he has to be her most trusted advisor and confidant to still be in her service. And he's a pretty good fighter, and he's pretty devoted to her, and seems pretty sorry for what he did. So I wonder if that is going to work out well or poorly, that decision.
Yeah, I wondered about that decision as well. And it did seem, Tyrion, I think, was doing his best to look at it from the point of view of being a ruler and what you should do. Not necessarily what you could do or what would be, blah, 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 but maybe what he should. And I think ultimately what he was trying to do was spare Jorah's life.
Yeah.
Yes, he did achieve that, and I think he's also acting in his own self-interest. I mean, sure. If you go,
that's true.
If you go back to the conversation in the boat when he's first kidnapped by Jorah, and he says, what makes you think she's going to believe you over me? It's at least 50-50. Yes, I think he feels some kinship with Jorah, and he does get his life spared, but he also gets him out of the way where he would be a rival for the ear and influence of Dany that Tyrion wants to have. So he maneuvers him pretty neatly out from in between himself and Dany.
And he also probably has a point, maybe, that if people know that Dany said if he comes back to town and she's going to have him killed, and then next thing you know, he's standing up there right next to it, that's not going to look too good for her. So there's a lot of reasons why I think that was actually probably a good decision.
Right. That and Jorah didn't give Tyrion any wine. No wine. And
well, then it was really cute when Daenerys snatched it away from him I wonder how long that's going to fly. But
yes, but one of the really greatest things about this show is that was in the first couple seasons were the complex politics, and it's fine that some of that's come out of it for other action that's going on, but it's fun to see some of that come back into it.
Yeah, and I really want to see him, Tyrion, as an advisor, and to go back into that world and see how they work together as a team.
Should be good.
Where are we?
Well, I think
Your
we're
turn,
on
right?
my number 4. My number 4 is Sansa discovering that Bran and Rickon are still alive. I thought that scene between she and Theon was pregnant with so much tension. And to see Theon or Reek finally own up to the fact that, you know, he was able to break through whatever brainwashing he's got under, just a slight little glimmer of, God, I'm not as big of a monster as you think I am. Your brothers are still alive. I didn't kill them, was an amazing breakthrough. And for as much as people really believed that what has been happening to Sansa is a way to maybe prod Theon into saving, I have a feeling this is a bit of a trigger that we may see a bit of a twist on this, where it's going to be Sansa who's going to end up saving Theon. I think she may have been able to find some sympathy at this point for what he has done, and realizing, wow, my brothers are still alive. Finally, some good news for Sansa Stark. That's it.
This scene I felt was a bit contrived.
Really?
It seemed, the conversation seemed unnatural to me. Like they were working really hard to figure out a way for her to get him riled up enough to blurt out that he didn't kill her brothers. And to me, it felt like they're not doing a very good, or I don't know, not very good, but it's not as good as I'd like, of covering up the writer's hand behind moving the plot ahead, you know. Just seemed a little unnatural to me. But what I did appreciate about it was Sansa's expression after he left. They're both of them just did a fantastic job acting it out. But she just was taking these really short, quick breaths, and just seemed really like high adrenaline. Oh my God.
Something that
I just heard that.
Something she's been assuming for quite some time now has been upended. You know, her brothers are alive. She's been assuming that they've been dead for quite some time. So this has got to be quite a shock to her. I don't know.
So.
I thought it was fantastic. I was very happy to see a ray of light for her.
Yeah, I agree with you both on this one. It's very well acted, and they're great actors, both of them. But I think this entire plot has been a little clumsy. With there's been several points in the Sansa and the Boltons storyline that have made me say, well, why are they doing that? Or why did this happen? And I think that's what gets you in a position to have to move it forward a little bit clumsily.
Mm-hmm. We'll see. I mean, I think what happens next could color, you know, how we feel about what's happened so far.
Absolutely.
Okay, my turn. So my number 3 it's my turn, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Is Arya. I was a little confused by the Arya story, but I'll give you guys my take and you tell me if I'm right. So she's pretending to be Lana the Oyster Girl and has concocted this backstory for herself. She's sort of going undercover so she can spy on this guy, the Thin Man, who I think is pretty much an insurance salesman.
Correct.
For captains going out to sea. If they don't return safely, he's supposed to give a big payout to their family. But he's a cheat.
Correct.
And if a sea captain doesn't come back, he just keeps the money. He doesn't pay the poor wife and children because they can't do anything about it. But what I didn't get is, how could a guy like that stay in business, for one? Because get a reputation.
You could do that once, then everybody would know about it.
Yeah, they wouldn't really want to go to you. And then it confused me even more when the sea captain bring him money and says he's had 18 successfully completed voyages, and the guy wouldn't take it. So I didn't understand why he wouldn't take that guy's business. Do you guys understand why he wouldn't do that? Okay.
No. I mean, I that's
It just confused me. Like, aren't they trying to make the point that he is taking people's business, and then they show him not taking a guy's business?
I didn't even, honestly, I didn't even pay that close attention to what was going on with him like that. I don't.
She was standing there shucking her oysters, listening in, and this guy comes up and says, I've completed 18 voyages. Here's proof. Basically, I'm insurable. Take my money. No, we won't do it. And he's like, but
maybe because he's too good.
If my wife and kids, that's right. Duh. He wants guys who will probably die.
Who are not going to have 18 successful voyages.
Yes. That's right. That's why he didn't take it. Okay.
That doesn't really make sense either. I mean, he's going to have the insurance money whether they successfully complete the voyage and the policy doesn't pay off.
Well, that's true. That's true.
I think the point here is that
is true, David.
I think the whole point here is that it doesn't even matter necessarily what he's doing, is that Arya is meant to be paying attention to him.
Oh yeah, we can talk about that, but saying it doesn't matter, it does matter to me because it doesn't make sense.
I mean, in terms of
in the grand scheme,
but I mean, for her, it's a job. If somebody hired the Faceless Men to knock somebody off, I don't necessarily know that it's the Faceless Men's job to determine the worth of that, but more of just, okay, this is our job to do. I mean, think of, kind of a mafia sort of a thing, where it's like, look, I don't care what you did or didn't do. I just got paid to kill you. Boom.
Yeah. Well, so the other thing is, it looked like one of the women that this guy cheated has gone to the Temple of Black and White to pray for help. And so they want to grant her this help, I assume. So that's Arya's mission, is to get to know the guy really well for some reason. I don't really understand why, unless they think that she has to get to know him in order to get close enough to him to give him that poison. Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah, I don't see these guys as just hired assassins. I don't think that's what's going on here. If you go back to Jaqen H'ghar, when Arya first comes across him, he's very specific.
It's got to be for the right reason.
Right, and he's very specific about 3 lives were saved, so the many-faced god is owed 3 lives. And there does seem to be some sense of justice, or at least even-handedness here, that's not as simple as somebody asked us to do this.
So maybe she's investigating whether he actually is a cheat, because it sure seemed like Jaqen H'ghar was pretty clear that he was leaving. He said in his own words something like leaving these families destitute. Stuff like that.
Yes, it seemed like that's part of what she was there to see.
No, I'm saying that Jaqen H'ghar, I think he already knew that. That's how it came across to me, that he already knew this guy was doing that.
Yes.
But maybe he didn't. I don't know.
But he denied that to her. In essence, he said, why would we send you there to see if we knew what you were going to see?
Okay. Yeah. All right. I see. I liked that insurance was described as gambling. I thought that was great. And I liked how deftly Arya shucked the oysters and how the camera kind of cut back and forth. That was just very well done, I thought.
Well, and the nice thing with the oysters with the vinegar is, well, you already have a very viable means of being able to poison him very easily.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I don't think it is about getting close enough to him, because she could just pour a little bit of that in there with the vinegar.
I see this as very much lessons for Arya. She's still
totally. I do too. Totally. There's no question about that.
And who knows? Maybe it's going to be a matter of, well, if you didn't have anything really bad on him, why would you kill him? Maybe it will be a lesson. Yeah. I don't know. But I really enjoyed that. That was actually my number 3 as well. Well, even going further back, was Arya becoming adept at the game of faces. And I really enjoyed that quick little scene between she and Jaqen where she was being tested. And for the most part, she passed. Very cool. I liked it a lot.
Agreed.
Yeah, she became Lana. A little bit of a modern name, but okay. Oysters,
right, David.
clams, and Cockles. What the
What's your
fuck
number
are
3?
cockles?
My-
What are cockles?
My number 3 is back in King's Landing, and it's simply Cersei suffering. Now, I mean, I don't want to be the kind of person that generally takes solace in the suffering of a human being, either real or fictional. But if anyone in any world has it coming, she does, and you kind of wish Sansa were there to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's tough. You know, I feel sort of the same way, but it's tough to feel very sympathetic when maybe a couple cells over is Marjorie, who she got stuck there.
True. And and Marjorie maybe not 100% innocent. She's manipulative herself, but there's lots of undeserved suffering that goes on in this show. I think it's just easy to feel like Cersei at least had it coming.
Well, there was a certain Schadenfreude to seeing her lapping up water from the ground. You know, I think we all enjoyed that to a certain degree.
I mean, I actually, when she did that, because you know, when you know someone's thirsty and you see water right next to them, at least for me, I want them to have it. Even with Cersei, I'm just like, there's something in me that's like, man, she's so thirsty. I want her to have that. And so when she got some, I was feeling kind of relieved for her, even though what I just said about she kind of deserves what she's getting. She doesn't deserve to die of thirst. I thought it was interesting, the charges against her: fornication, treason, incest, the murder of King Robert. And she goes, all lies. And then Qyburn's like, yes, of course.
Right.
The work is progressing.
Now that must be in reference to his
project,
Frankensteinian Steinian project, right? That's what I thought.
And this is one thing that it's more of a book talk detail, but the Prince Tommen, now King Tommen, is much younger in the novel. He's 8 years old, I believe, and that makes it a little more understandable why he's unable to function when the adults he was relying on, when he's deprived of them.
Yeah.
Because one thing you wonder watching Cersei is, where's their army? But you know, she's maneuvered them into a position where not only the Faith Militant has a lot of power, but there's no leader on her side that's interested in saving her.
And I just think, God, with everything that's going on around Westeros and beyond, the crown is in the weakest state possible, it seems like, to handle anything that might come up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's not in good shape.
And so, just while we're on this scene, that the way the nun kept saying confess really made me want to slap her. Like, that was very unnerving to me. I liked it, but I was like, God, if somebody was saying that to me, I would want to kill them. And then I was wondering about why Cersei didn't confess. I mean, on the surface, she seemed prideful and didn't want to have to kowtow to anybody. But also, I think if she did confess and publicly say the thing that everybody already knows anyway about Jaime, but also admit that she killed or had a hand in killing Robert, that would be, I don't know, even if she could be free, she wouldn't be the Queen Mother. I think Tommen would be off the throne, you'd think.
Yeah, it would undermine the legitimacy of her son for sure, at the very least.
Well, now the incest, I think, is, I don't know if that has so much to do with her 3 kids, which, is a product of incest, but specifically Lancel. You know, first cousin, I think that may also be considered an incest sort of thing.
I think you're probably right, yeah. But the part about killing Robert, though.
Well, for sure. And now, unfortunately, whether you're talking Loras or Marjorie or Cersei, they are guilty of each and everything that they're all charged with. That's kind of the interesting thing with this.
Yeah.
They are all guilty of this, of everything they're being charged with. So that puts a weird taint on everything.
Keep in mind,
I guess. I mean, Loras is guilty of having a lover that, you know, in this day and age.
Oh, I'm not saying it's
more
a
power
just
to you.
law.
I know you're not.
Then you get into the question of what is a just law and what is not, you know. But, you know, you get into a question of whether or not the Faith Militant has the right to set up these kind of laws. But Cersei gave them
But the fact is
right.
they have the power, yeah.
They have the power, and Cersei gave them that right. So it's a weird sort of thing where, well, everybody's guilty of what they're, and if they're making the laws, then okay, homosexuality is illegal. Boom. There's Loras. Lying under oath. Boom. There's Marjorie. Cersei. Yeah, she's just guilty of everything.
Another thing that's interesting is that Kevin is now the leader of the small council, which basically makes him the most powerful person since Tommen is, and Kevin's son is Lancel, who sort of is instrumental in causing this whole thing.
Well, Kevin, I believe.
Kevin doesn't like what Lancel's gotten himself into.
Yeah, Kevin's a good guy. He really is. So
I mean, the kingdom might be better off with him.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of imagination, maybe, but but at least he seems like a fairly solid, logical person. One other thing I think to keep in mind with Cersei and why she's reluctant to confess is that this whole show began with offering Ned Stark a deal that he confesses and he's going to live out his life at the Wall. And what ended up happening to him, he got his head chopped off. So she knows that once you confess and put it out there, you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable position.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Okay. So my number 2 is also Cersei, and we pretty much talked all about it.
Okay. And my number 2 is actually Tyrion and Dany, which we already talked about. David?
Well, I mean, I'm back on the battle for number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, really.
Pretty
and we pretty much talked all about the battle.
Yeah.
Okay. You got any more, Mr. Blog?
My number 1 is the battle. So
okay, I have a number 1. So it's Walkers versus Whites. And this episode got me thinking about the difference between the White Walkers and the Whites and what they're both like. I didn't notice this before, or I forgot, but when a White Walker turns a dead person into a white, they have glowing blue eyes, just like when the Night's King turned that Craster's baby into what, at least I think he turned him into a White Walker.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. We don't know that, but it just seemed more focused and ceremonial and like a bigger deal. So that's what we think.
It would seem really pointless to turn a newborn
into a zombie.
Into a white, you know?
Yeah.
He'll gum you to death. I don't think
it'd be cute.
He can't even move. He's just gonna can't even hold his own head up. I mean, that's pretty pointless. It's like, look, it's a white worm. It's a white worm. He might
become this little crawling, leaping,
Yeah, and so maybe my idea of Jon Snow being a future White Walker is wrong. Maybe that's why they need babies, like Craster's babies. Maybe they can only turn a baby into to grow into a White Walker.
Maybe.
I don't think so, though. I wondered that too, but then there's this whole thing about the Night's King, which I really don't want to talk too much about because it's kind of a book-related thing. But anyway, I was wondering that too. But I was thinking that maybe when White Walkers transform a living person, then they turn into a White Walker. But when they do a similar process to a dead person, it becomes a white/zombie.
That makes a lot of sense. And they made it very clear in this battle. I mean, you saw a white come to life early in the show when it was the body of the Night's Watch guy that they didn't burn, and his eyes went blue and he turned into a white. But here you get to see it in person, that they're animating the dead.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder awesome. Too, if you could, so they had the sort of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse up on the mountain there.
Yeah.
If you could kill the 4 White Walkers in the area, so they killed one of them, Jon Snow did. But if you could kill all 4 of them, would that take care of the whites as well? Because nothing would be left to animate them. Or does the animation survive the White Walkers?
It's a good question.
Maybe.
And how many White Walkers have we seen? Remember that whole procession that Sam saw? There were a bunch of them, right?
Yeah, there were more than 4. As I recall, it looked like a little army of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, even in this, you had the 4, but then you had the one that Jon killed, and I don't know if the Night's King was one of those 4 as well. So it's
right. And I think there's a lot more. I mean, even when the baby got turned,
I was going to say, there was like a circle in that circle of them. Yeah.
And then finally, I wonder how developed the White Walker Society is. I noticed that. Well, I went back and looked, and the Night's King had similar armor to what he had on back then, but I don't think that armor is the same armor they had when they were turned, if they were turned when they were older. I think that it's made or somehow, and it's part of their culture. And it just makes me, and this, their whole demeanor makes me feel like they're very intelligent, and I'm so curious about it. But at the same token, I don't necessarily want to know too much. And I love that they haven't talked, and I hope they never do.
Right.
Because it keeps them mysterious.
Keeping in mind, as hopeless as it seems right now, because they seemed very, very formidable, there are other elements still to come to play. Like you guys mentioned, dragons. There's also the three-eyed crow and Bran and all that whole story going on that we haven't seen this season at all. And they have a lot of knowledge, I'm sure, to bring to bear on the whole question of what the White Walkers are and how to combat them.
In going back to the early times we saw the White Walkers, one slight difference, and I don't know if this matters at all, and I'm sure it doesn't. But when we first saw the White Walker in episode 1, the prologue, and then when we saw them again with Sam, when he saw that whole procession, like you brought up, they weren't wearing armor or clothes at all. So they seem to have, armored up a little bit. Because they were like cruising around like Abercrombie and Fitch models,
shirtless,
just all shirtless and being all, look at my icy pecs. Now they're covered up in armor. So there's been a change there as well. I'm assuming that's just a production thing. Like, okay, let's not be ridiculous. Put them in armor, make them look badass. And I got to say, it was badass when you see the Night's King walking out on that pier, like just strutting along in his leathers, and then he gets there at the end with the whole "come at me, crow" thing. It was just like, that's fucking cool, and it may not have been as cool if he was just like shirtless.
Maybe they armored up for battle.
Maybe they armored up for battle, for sure.
But he was wearing that, like I said, when they turned the little baby.
No, they were. So there seemed to be a bit of a shift happening before that in season 4 and what came before.
Maybe they just wear different things at different times, like we do.
I wear armor all day, every day.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, wait, is it naked? Hold on, I'm naked all day, every day. That's what it is.
And let's
move along.
One other little details about these guys, where they're left on the pier there, and for a second you're saying, can they swim? Because if they can swim, we're fucked. But evidently they can't swim because the wall was put in there to stop them thousands of years ago, and it's at least effective to a degree. And if they could swim, they could go around it.
Around it. Yeah.
Good point.
Yep.
Very good point.
I have some notes.
Do it.
I noticed in Marine first that, some of the people are dressed very similarly. And I think that's to show their culture, but also just the limitations of trying to outfit hundreds of people. So they don't vary as much as I wish they did. Same thing in Dorne. Sometimes you get a lot of people wearing very similar clothes.
What, you don't like the soldiers wearing yellow mattress pads?
I mean, I like the design. I actually like the designs, but it's just when you get so many people wearing, and then in areas that we visit more often, there seems to be more variance. I think
they have a little bit of the Star Trek problem, and the Star Trek problem being that they would beam down to a planet, and the entire planet would essentially amount to being like a room or two, and about 10 people. And they sort of have, this is such a far-flung and huge show to film. Like they say, remove Jorah from the city, and it ends up like 2 guys just sort of walk him out a gate, and that's it.
Yeah, totally.
And exactly. Everybody's wearing a toga.
That's I remember feeling that same way about Star Trek, not only about the clothes, but it just felt like the culture was a little too simple sometimes, because there was an episode of Doctor Who where they beamed into this outpost that was right next to this really deep cavern, and like Satan was inside.
Yes.
Remember that one?
Yes.
And they did such a good job of making it feel like those people were fully formed characters that had just been there. And I mean, if you can pull that off, it's amazing.
Well, it's funny. Right when you're saying this, I'm thinking, I don't really see the issue with this. However, I did notice last night watching this episode, every wildling was wearing the exact same black and gray fur outfit.
Well, why do you think I brought it up?
Yeah, no, that you're right, because it didn't even dawn. But I was watching. I'm like, why are they all wearing? I mean, is there one like? Did they kill one giant mammoth that had the exact same fur, and they're all sharing the fur from that? But yeah,
that's what happened. Or what if one of them just had pink on?
That would have been great, to see that. It's the one.
Like, I got to be me,
the one flamboyant guy in the back. Hello,
we're in trouble. Okay, next, I love that everyone gives Jon Snow a hard time for being pretty.
Yeah,
I
Rattleshirt
awesome.
gave him some shit as well.
Yeah, and a lot of shows would just ignore that and pretend it's normal for people to look like that, but I'm glad they don't do that. I think I had one more. Oh, we didn't talk about Sam and Gilly with Ollie coming in. Sam said sometimes a man has to make hard choices that may look wrong, but are right in the long run. And it looked like to me, Ollie took that to mean, so I should kill Jon Snow? Is that what you're saying? Or something like that, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like...
Yeah, it was funny that Sam reassured him that, don't worry, if you're worried about him, he always comes back. And I was thinking, that's not what he's worried about.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about that. The one note I had on this that we didn't already cover was, did you guys notice Ramsay dropping the name of a book? He actually said, I did. It's a feast awesome. He's a feast for crows. And I was just like, oh my God, that is so on the nose. You just dropped the title.
I liked it.
Yeah,
I loved it too.
He said basically, let's attack Stannis and leave a feast for the crows.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought that was great. And I love that reasoning that, that as Roose and Ramsay were talking out the battle plan and discussing the fact that, like, look, they don't have the men or the provisions to be able to hold a siege in this kind of snow. And, so you get this thing going on where Stannis knows he has to do this now, otherwise, because winter is coming, that if they don't do this now, they're never going to be able to do this again. And yet Ramsay and Roose are banking on the fact that he can't even do this now, that they don't have the ability to fight in this kind of weather. They are not Northerners. And, and then we haven't even touched at all on Ramsay then discussing the fact that all he needs is 20 men to go and take them out.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out what that mission is.
And, Northerners are a hardier breed than these Southern bastards.
I like that Roose is calm, cool, and collected, and he's always very calculating, although vicious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But he gives Ramsay some room to be crazy.
It's just 20 guys.
Yeah, it's like, okay, sure, you want to go be crazy? I still have my fallback defensive plan.
Yeah, right. It does. I mean, aside from losing a few guys, it's no skin off his back.
And he's got a legitimate son coming. He's got a legitimate son coming anyway. Whatever. Go ahead, you little freak.
I wanted to say about the Sam and Gilly thing. I just love that Sam brushed off his near-death experience. Not to worry, men brawl from time to time. It's only natural.
It's because Sam's the best. It's Sam the Slayer,
it's
man.
Okay.
Oh, he's got to look tough in front of Gilly. He loves it. It's great.
All right. Any more notes?
I'm good.
David?
Good.
Okay. Let's go into the listener responses. You go ahead, Eric.
All right. First one is from Marcy Brinker. Holy shit is right. And by the way, it's because the post was, holy shit, what'd you think of that episode?
Yeah.
I can't think of an episode I've ever enjoyed more than this one. If Benioff and Weiss heard any complaints early on about things moving too slow early in the season, they must have laughed themselves silly knowing they had this episode up their sleeve. The Dany Tyrion scenes were riveting. It was cool seeing a little bit of Arya with her new identity. I was thrilled to see Sansa find out that Bran and Rickon were not murdered. I felt so satisfied to see Cersei getting some comeuppance finally, and then top that all off with wildlings, giants, and the army of the undead. Ah, damn it, I love this show. 5 out of 5 creepy undead children.
Awesome. I thought that summed it up really well.
Yeah, it did. It's great.
John Bucket says, Episode 8 is the new Episode 9. Epic stuff. Tyrion secures his position. Cersei gets a slap. Arya levels up. Sansa gets some truth from Reek/Theon. Then it all kicks up north. Zombies, giants, White Walkers loved it.
Radames Montes says, the final scene with the White Walker raising the dead was so creepy and strong. We finally got to see in epic form the power of winter coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joy Lee says, my friends and I were so ramped up after the Hardhome battle that we sparred with umbrellas and pretended to shatter each other. I love that.
Yeah. Rob Williams says, why are they not rowing?
I was totally thinking that too. Joanne Philomena says, I'm still breathing into a paper bag.
Martha Michaela Hutchison Brown. Oh, Jesus Christ. Martha Michaela Hutchman Brown, excuse me. Was I the only one who thought that Ollie put something nasty in the food that he gave to Sam?
Something was going on there. Jake St. Thomas says, I give this episode 5 iZombie children out of 5. I fucking hate thens.
Alicia Stout, you gave me permission to skip the first part of that. 7 hells, winter has finally come.
Drea Aid says, winter came all over our faces.
So winter facial. Kimberly M. Hazim, crossing my fingers for Dany to fly in on her dragon soon and set the undead army ablaze.
Yeah, then it'll truly be a song of ice and fire.
Indeed.
Laura South said, did you see how that White Walker just walked right into the fire? It didn't seem to bother it at all. Yikes.
Laura Willie Swink says, I love The Walking Dead. But holy angry giants, Game of Thrones is now my favorite show on the tube. Literally was jumping in my seat during the entire last half of the show. Giants stomping on zombies, an army of undead children, and Jon Snow's Valyrian blade carves through a White Walker. What? Such an amazing episode.
Jacob Evans says, I like seeing the repeated coercive orders to confess out of the books.
Elizabeth Garcia says, such an awesome episode. Nothing is as thrilling as zombie hordes. I give it 5 creepy-ass undead children out of 5. Well, these undead kids are getting a lot of love here, aren't they?
I know. They were creepy. Laura South says, oh my God, that was terrifying.
And Anthony Farnsworth says, I think it's okay to say Jon Snow knows more than nothing now.
Collaborate and listen. Ice is back with my brand new invention. Something grabs a hold of me tightly, flow like a.
All right, we're back, and it's time for news about Game of Thrones.
The fuck is that?
In there. That's the zombie sounds I was playing earlier. So Kit Harington, who plays Jon Snow, talked about filming the big battle scene in this episode. He said that was a month of shooting and it added up to 20 minutes on camera. We shot less than a minute a day. If you can imagine how much we had to get through with the big CGI elements, with the massive amounts of fight scenes to choreograph. He said it was the most intense thing I've ever done on the show.
Wait, that was CGI?
That's pretty amazing that they spent that much time on it. I think that's awesome.
I agree. That was so awesome. Yeah.
All right. This is from a while back, but I think it kind of shed some interesting light on things, maybe a little depressing actually. But in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, George R.R. Martin said he aimed to finish the 5th book in A Song of Ice and Fire, The Winds of Winter, before Game of Thrones season 6. Yeah, the 6th book. But so before next spring. But in that same interview, I mean, we've all heard that, but in that same interview, he said he just came up with a big revealing plot twist on a longtime character. He said, this is going to drive you readers crazy, but I love it. I'm still weighing whether to go that direction or not. It's a great twist. It's easy to do things that are shocking or unexpected, but they have to grow out of characters. They have to grow out of situations. Otherwise, it's just being shocking for being shocking. But this is something that seems very organic and natural, and I could see how it would happen. And with the various 3 or 4 characters involved, it all makes sense. But it's nothing I've ever thought of before, and it's nothing they can do in the show, because the show has already, on this particular character, made a couple decisions that will preclude it, where in my case, I have not made these decisions. I read that, and then I read this next thing, and it made me kind of get the feeling that even though Martin is really supportive of the show and the showrunners, that there's a part of him maybe that isn't totally in alignment with the changes being made to the story in the show. There was another article about the 5 characters from the books that George R.R. Martin wishes were in the series. And he said he wanted Loras Tyrell's 2 older brothers, Willis and Garland.
Yeah, I can see that.
He said, quote, "I didn't just put them in for hoots and giggles. They have roles to play in the last 2 books, and they don't exist in the show. I've said from the start I wish we had more hours, but showrunners David Benioff and Dan Weiss work 24/7, 12 months a year."
I could see that. As a book reader, I could see where he's coming from, especially with Willis. Yep.
So anyway,
wink, wink,
that was food for thought.
Yeah.
Food for thought. Finally, well, no, 2 more. The epic thrash band Mastodon.
Yeah, they were in last night's episode.
Yeah, as Wildlings. And they only filmed one day, then, on location in Ireland in November, the day before they kicked off the European tour. It was a 14-hour day. Lyricist Bran Daler said, "So yeah, you just kind of sit and wait for your part, and they put us up front and basically had Bill and Brent lay down in the mud. I got stabbed in the stomach and my throat slit. They just kept doing that over and over again. I decided after 6 or 7 times that it wouldn't be a bad way to go."
I gotta say, I'm not a big metal guy, but Mastodon's pretty fucking good.
Really? So, I don't know them, actually.
No, they're pretty fucking badass. So I was like, when I heard that they were in the show, I'm like, that's cool.
It's a good scene for a metal band to be in.
Hells yeah. 7 hells yeah.
And then finally, I don't think we've talked about this on our podcast, but Sophie Turner is going to be playing Jean Grey in the upcoming X-Men Apocalypse.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. That's cool, right?
That's perfect. Yes.
Yeah. I hope she does a good job. I can't wait to see. It comes out in May of next year.
By the way, for those of you who may be noticing a distinct lack of David,
David's been sick.
He's been sick, so
that's why he was gone last week, and he died. No, I'm just kidding.
You'll hear him again during.
He'll be
book
back
talk.
for book talk.
He'll be back for book talk, but it's just
we decided to let him have a break on his voice.
Yeah,
or that's what he asked for. All right, that's it for the news. Let's move on to Raven's calls. So we had pretty much, I think, the most emails ever this week.
We really did.
If we don't read yours, we still love you, and please try again next time. You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
First one comes from Jason Weaver. Not to be picky, but if John's goal was to get the wildlings to go back with him, how come there weren't enough boats for all of them? Didn't they give thought to how they'd transport all of them in advance? Maybe I'm missing something. Okay, real quickly, did you not see all of the ships offshore?
Yeah, those were just boats to get from the big giant ships to the shore. And they may have had to make a couple of trips to get everybody out there.
Absolutely, but you can't get those huge ships that close to shore, so I think that's it. So moving on. Also, the water keeping the walkers from advancing. Are we to presume that when winter comes, it will freeze over, allowing them to get to Westeros? No, I think there are other ways to get to Westeros. I
don't think the ocean freezes, right? I don't know for sure, but I don't think so. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I assume they're going to break down that wall.
Yeah. Tear down this wall.
That's one of their, some kind of White Walker, luminary character that they all look up to will give that speech.
Exactly.
It'll be a rousing speech. They'll never take our freedom. Okay. Olivia Deck says, who is the hooded person on the boat with John when they're fleeing the whites? Do you know anything about that? I was reading something about some person that stood out.
I didn't notice anybody standing out. I mean, I know there was Dolorous Ed. He was there. But I didn't notice anybody in particular.
I think I was reading that somebody looked conspicuous and somebody said maybe it was just some extra who had a funny look on his face.
Maybe. I don't know. Next one comes from Carlos. Hey, Carlos. He's a regular Under the Comic Covers writer. So great to hear from you, man. Wow. Hey, fellow Throners. for the men only pod. Woo.
Woof, woof, woof.
Oh, God. I thought this week's was a great episode. We finally got to see Khaleesi and Tyrion chatting, and I loved it, especially when she said he needed to still be able to talk and took his wine away. That made me very sad. His face was great. He didn't let many people take his wine. Must be a special relationship building. Haha, Cersei. That's right. Sip that sweet karma off the floor. Jon Snow's speech was enough to raise the hairs on the back of my neck, and the Valyrian steel taking out a White Walker was a cheer out loud moment. The whole last scene was wonderfully executed. So, what do you think will come next? I say a Stannis versus Bolton smackdown with no more walkers yet, as they will take some time getting around to it, since it seems they can't swim. Aha! I've got a new tactic. Build an enormous moat to replace the wall. Problem solved. Thanks.
That
Carl.
will freeze over.
Yeah, that would probably.
That would freeze over.
Very deep, very salty. Maybe it won't. I don't know.
What's going to happen next? Yeah, hopefully a big giant battle at Winterfell with being flanked by Littlefinger's men from the Eyrie.
And Dany and Tyrion are riding dragons going, yeah, yeah, and they come and breathe fire on everybody.
Yeah.
And that melts the wall because it's dragon fire. I don't know.
And we'll see the walkers show up again one episode next year, and then hopefully by the finale the year after that.
I don't know, man. Seems like they're a formidable foe
Gearing
at
up.
this point. So,
As it did in episode 1, season 1.
yeah, well,
We'll see. This show likes to take its time.
yes, it does.
From Jen from San Diego. Hey, Jen. Remember Jen?
I do remember Jen. How you doing?
She says, great episode, so fulfilling. I was so excited to see Tyrion advising Dany, but it also makes me very nervous for Tyrion as well. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think he's better off right now than he has been in a while.
Agreed.
When Arya was describing to Jack and Hagar her alter ego Lana peddling her muscles, all I could wonder was, wow, business owner Arya, did she get funding from Shark Tank or Kickstarter? Yeah, maybe she did have to actually do what she said her orphan character did. Maybe. Start with one bucket. Lana, the bivalve merchant of Ragman Harbor, made me hungry, but mussels with vanilla? What the fuck? Yuck. But it wasn't mussels with vanilla.
It was oysters with vinegar.
Oysters with vinegar.
Yeah. I don't know where people
good.
are. I've heard other people talk about mussels. It was oysters, clams, and cockles. Now, I don't know. Maybe cockles or mussels. I don't know. It's possible.
Is cockles the same thing as... Isn't there a nursery rhyme? Silver bells and cockle shells.
Yeah. I always think of cockles, the cockles of my heart, but I don't know. I don't have shellfish in my heart, but although I do love oysters.
Me too.
God, I love oysters.
I used to only like smoked oysters, and then I came around to just eating them right out of the shell.
No, I tried smoking oysters. They do nothing for me.
They're all good.
No, you can't smoke them. They're a little too wet.
Oh, I got it. For some reason, I was picturing you trying to get oysters to smoke.
I'm sticking a cigarette in there. Come on, smoke, dude.
Come on,
smoke.
whip. This is what happens when Karen's not on.
This is true.
It's just me and you.
Next one comes from Teresa Gallo. I love your podcast. I love your podcast. Oh, well, shit, we love you if you're going to put it in all caps. Fuck yeah. After watching the latest edition of Game of Thrones, I finally felt like I was watching a true Game of Thrones episode. I've been a little disappointed in the season so far. It's not that there hasn't been enough action scenes. I'm okay with that. But I felt it's been slow moving. That being said, after the battle with the White Walkers, the game being played for the throne by the other characters seems so insignificant in comparison. That's the point. Fuck the throne. Everybody's going to die. Cynical. So my question is, can the White Walkers die if they are burned? No. If so, can Jon Snow get a message to Dany asking her to have her dragons set all the White Walkers ablaze? Does Jon Snow even know that there are dragons? I'm dying to know the answers to my burning questions.
I bet dragon fire could hurt them.
I think the whites would be burned up to a crisp, and you just need Jon to step up with his Valyrian steel and crack, 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 crack all the White Walkers, and we're all good.
But I don't think John knows there are dragons, and I don't think Danny knows there are White Walkers. So we got ways to go there.
Very true.
From James Guy Lunas. Hey, James.
Hey.
He says some scattered thoughts on this week's episode. I feel that Theon is now redeemed. I would like to see him do more, but if all he accomplishes in his life is telling Sansa that Bran and Rickon are alive, that would be enough. I don't know. I mean, he killed 2 innocent kids.
Yeah, that's not enough.
Yeah. I think he needs to do some more stuff.
Yeah, he's got some more rehab ahead of him. Yeah.
I was glad to see John and Sam's hypothesis about dragon steel be proved correct and confirm it for us that Valyrian steel is indeed effective against these creatures. Yeah, totally. That was awesome. My friend summed up the final shot perfectly. Row, row, row the boat. Row the fucking boat.
I got to say, I know a lot of hay has been made about the fact they seem like they're not rowing the boat very fast, or they seem like they're really close to the shore.
Didn't. Yeah.
However, I got to say, in defense of Jon Snow and the rest of them not rowing, my understanding is in times of extreme fear and stress, people tend, we always talk about
to row faster.
No, we always talk about fight or flight. But the reality
is good.
Well, the reality is, it would be. But the reality is most people freeze. This came up with I don't know if you remember the Norwegian mass murderer dude who went to a Christian camp and shot up 70 or 80 some odd people. And they were asking him about it later. And he said, most people, they just froze in place. I walked up to him. I had a gun. I said, if you don't run, I'm going to kill you. And they just stood still. So I shot him. And I've heard that it's horrible. No, it really is. And I've heard that they're talking about changing this notion of fight or flight to fight or flight or freeze, because the majority of people in these kind of stressful situations, they just lock up. They just do nothing. And I have a feeling when you're faced with seeing what is probably, I think by most human brains considered unfathomable, just impossible, that you just lock up. You're just like, what the fuck? And there's a part of you that's like, I got to see what the fuck's going to happen now.
I would buy that whole freezing theory if they hadn't just been in a vigorous fight and jumped into a bunch of boats.
Maybe.
But I could see what you were just starting to say about just kind of, I mean, they got a safe enough distance away and they just wanted to look on and see
of course,
what was going on. It was clear that they weren't going to jump in the water or anything.
Cinematically, it had to be, John couldn't be way out there going, oh, give me a telescope so I can see what's he doing
or
out
he's
there?
Staring at him and there's a guy in the back screaming, stroke.
Yeah, the coxswain back there, stroke. Yeah, no, that wouldn't have worked. So
yeah, it just needed to be still for the scene. Yeah.
It did. So again, remember what we're looking at and what we're talking about. You can try to employ realism and reality to it, but we're talking about an ice dude bringing back a bunch of dead people to life. So I don't know.
I think you have something there, James, because a lot of people thought the same thing.
Oh no, absolutely, I was sort of like, absolutely.
Shouldn't they be getting out of there?
Yeah, agreed. But at the same time,
they made the choice to have a poignant pause there.
And I think the show is better off for it. I really do.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, me too. I do too.
Well, thank you guys so much for all the great letters. We did get a ton. Jason, you really whittled this down because we had so much good feedback on this. Wow.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's move along to Book Talk with Mr. Blog and David.
Okay, we're back with Book Talk, and it's just David and I. David, how you doing?
I am doing well, especially in the wake of such a great episode.
No kidding. So this episode had a couple of things directly out of the book, and a whole fuck of a lot of things that had nothing to do with the book at all.
Yeah, I think you'd have to say the headliner in this episode of the TV show was far from where the novel went.
Okay, so let's break it down real quick. Dany and Tyrion hasn't happened in the book yet. nothing to discuss.
Right. And I think what's interesting about show versus book in the Danny story, obviously that's a different plot point, although you can feel in the books that it's going to come at some point, or at least we hope it does.
We hope it does. Although I think Martin has said it's never going to happen.
So
I don't know.
Maybe not. But
I don't know.
I think the main difference we're seeing in the show right now, besides just the basic plot point, is that Danny in the show is being placed, I think, in a more powerful light. Even though she's had some problems, she lost her Barristan, she had to make some concessions. She still seems confident and pretty much in control.
Yes.
And in the book by this time, she's really beleaguered. She's worn down into marrying Hisdar. She really doesn't want to do it. He wears her down into it. We sense her uncertainty. We sense her fatigue. Many others are competing for her hand in marriage as well, not just Hisdar. And it gets a lot more convoluted and difficult for her. So in the TV show, she still seems like she's in a pretty strong position.
Yeah, and which I think for the book it was this huge relief when Drogon swoops into the fighting pit, almost to save her in some sort of way. This one is going to have a different feel to it altogether if and when that happens. And I'm assuming it's going to happen either probably episode 10. I don't know if it'll happen in the next episode, but we'll see. We did get a lot of emails. Did you get any of these emails about the book?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I need to very quickly, and I don't know if Jason included this, I got called out on something for making some mistakes last week when I jumped on with Grace. So I need to just address that real quick, only in the sense of saying very quickly, David, when you ended up sick on that, I was thrown in the last minute. I didn't have really a chance to do much research on anything, and I incorrectly mentioned that it was Ariane who was maybe the seductress of Ares Oakheart. I think I said Ariane Sand. She is, in fact, a real Martell. So there were a couple of things that I made a mistake on in that, but I had a few minutes to just kind of throw that out there. Should we go ahead and read some of these letters, or what do you want to do with this?
Okay, now I'm with you.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and read at least the first one here from somebody. It covers quite a few things that we could probably talk about as well. And the first one comes from Jacob Evans. And he says, I can't shake the feeling that Sam just talked Ollie into stabbing John. He said, sometimes you have to do something you know is right, even if it looks wrong to everyone else. Well, killing the Lord Commander might fit that bill. And there's no way Sam wields the knife, but it's powerful TV if he thinks he's responsible for it nevertheless. Also, I doubt it was accidental that a man was telling a girl, Lana, not Cat, apparently, so we get the cat of the canals thing. By the way, before I move on, did you notice the cat running in front of the screen the moment she mentioned canals?
Yeah, so they like to change some names, and they like to put some subtle little dealios.
We had a lot of little book things in there, yeah. Moving on here. To turn right instead of left and to go to the docks just to see. She's going blind before the season is over. I agree. For sure. The show also built up the lying game a bit more this episode, but did away with the 3 things you learned game, which is a bit of a disappointment. They're trimming out a lot, so.
Yes, so, and just to remind everyone of what happened in the book, she confessed to a killing. She was given as response or as punishment a glass of warm milk, and then woke up in the morning blind.
But as it turns out, it actually wasn't a punishment. It was just another lesson. So,
yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that happening. Blah, blah, blah. The show also built up a line game. Okay. I liked meeting Rattleshirt just long enough to watch him get clobbered to death, unless we already met him way back when John was a captive. I can't recall. Yes, we had met Rattleshirt before, because I specifically remember Ygritte saying, Lord of Bones. So, yeah, that came up.
Yes.
We'd
met him a few times, I think. Back in the Jon Snow and Ygritte days.
And then Jacob asked a quick question here. Were the events of Hardhome actually mentioned in the book? This is a good thing to talk about. Yes, they were. And it was completely off page. And it was something that John had sent an emissary up to get these wildlings to go talk them into coming back. And once the whole notion of the gift came up and all this, and this did happen. Now, to your point, you mentioned David early in this episode about them swimming. There was something in that description of what happened at Hardhome where they said the dead were coming out of the water. So I think on the ships, they were actually coming up out of the water onto the ships.
Which doesn't mean they could swim and navigate a long distance to get around the wall, but it is.
No, absolutely.
But it is, you're right, and it is scary in that way. And I believe what happened in the book is that John sent Val, who was the sister of Mance Rayder's wife, Dalla, who had died, to negotiate with the wildlings and try to bring them back, basically on the same terms that were given in the show.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't Jon Snow who went up there to do it. So we have another email here from Kevin E. He says, on last week's pod, a fan left feedback curious about why Balon Greyjoy is still alive, suggesting that Melisandre's Wang leech magic was ineffectual. As a reminder, after the leech burned, Balon did receive his only living heir's dick in a box, living to watch his line's power wash away in a fate some ways worse than Joffrey's. Love the show, Kevin E. I, for one, really believe that Balon needs to die.
Yeah, it's sort of a big loose end hanging out there, and it's really I think the show, especially coming into 7 seasons, can't deal with every storyline of the book. We've seen several cut out, and that seems to be one they've just basically gone away from, except for Theon/Reek.
Now, I will say, I'm very excited about something. There was a casting call that went out this week, which I don't know if Jason's going to mention in the news or not. I don't think he will be, because it is a little spoilery. But it really sounds like they're looking for Euron Greyjoy as somebody who will show up in season 6, which makes me think, all right, we're going to get some closure to the Greyjoy thing, or at least reintroduce them again. We also found out that it looks like they're looking for the Tarly family. So that's giving a little credence to the fact that Sam will be headed south to go to the Citadel.
All of which is great, sort of exciting to look forward to when some of those other storylines come back into it. And the storyline in the book of the Greyjoys, Asha, Euron, Victarion, all struggling to succeed Balon Greyjoy, it is something that could be done. I think that it's not a storyline that took a great deal of time or bandwidth in the book. So if that's something they wanted to introduce, and Victarion going to try and meet Daenerys and offer himself as one of the suitors, which becomes a major storyline in A Dance with Dragons, I think it could be done in the show if they so choose.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. The next 2 emails are basically, one is from, let me get this right here, Charlie Newell, and the other one from somebody, from Laura. These are both taking Laura South, actually, from Corvallis, Oregon. These are both taking me to task regarding what I already mentioned about me referring to Arianne, as Arianne Sand as opposed to Martell. My apologies for that. I just didn't have time. But
wait a minute, you got a detail wrong about these books? They're not very complicated. I mean, I can't understand how you could get a detail wrong.
With a few minutes notice to jump on there. I know, I'm a total dick. It's true. And also, look, I mean, bottom line is Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons are the ones I'm the least up on. The first 3 books I feel very solid on. These 2, they were convoluted, they were difficult. I don't have all the details totally right. However, there is one little thing here that, let me get this right. Charlie, is it Charlie? Excuse me. And I just lost it here again. That Charlie from California brings up that, okay, I had made a lot of mention about Duran, that I felt that he was underserved in his character development, that we should have a little bit of fear going with him in terms of him being a stronger presence. And he's pointing out that he was just kind of a fat guy, gout-ridden, staring off at the children playing in the water gardens. But what we had as book readers was the understanding that he was very powerful in the sense that he was calculating and cool, very different from his brother Oberyn. And just the two very brief scenes we've seen of Duran just haven't really felt. I haven't had that feeling conveyed yet, and that was my frustration. But
he hasn't been given a lot of substance at all. And
no, he hasn't.
The storyline in the novel, the big plan is for Quentin Martell, another Prince of Dorne, to go and make an alliance with Dany and hopefully get her hand in marriage, which seems to be the plan of several of the houses once they know about her and the, you know, the power that she has assembled. And of course, the name that she has. You know, I don't know that it's the greatest plan.
No.
But maybe it's the only option for some of these mid-range and power houses to try to jump over some of the more powerful houses of Westeros.
Okay. So those were the letters that we got this week regarding book talk. Now about this issue. So we've already talked about Hardhome, the way that went down. We talked about the fact that the Tyrion Dany thing hasn't happened. What about Cersei? That was straight out of the book.
It was very faithful. I just had a few notes on some things that are different, and not to say better or worse, but just to draw the contrast. Sure. One I mentioned earlier that Tommen, who becomes king, is much younger in the book, 8 years old.
Yeah.
And I think the way that whole situation comes about, a little more groundwork is laid for it in the book. And it really starts with the deaths of the crown, which Cersei's incompetent management, she doesn't have a plan to deal with that. With the Iron Bank of Braavos, which begins to support Stannis because the Lannisters can't pay back their debts. And it's also how we end up with the Faith Militant, because the crown has a bunch of debts to the Faith of the Seven, and they can't pay. So the deal she ends up making is that the Faith Militant can be resurrected, and of course that ends up going very badly for her.
Yes, it most certainly does.
And just a couple other interesting details, I thought. Mance Rayder in the books still around.
Yes.
His death has been faked, and she has sent him south in search of who they think might be Arya, a girl that she's seen in her vision on a dying horse.
Now, and of course, the person that Mance Rayder is put into, as it were, you know, the glamours that they worked, where basically the person who was killed in place of Mance Rayder was Rattleshirt.
Yes.
But I think they made that very clear in this episode that storyline is effectively dead. Mance is dead, and now Rattleshirt is dead. Mance Rayder is gone.
Yes, if you were hoping that Mance was going to come back to life in Rattleshirt's body, it ain't going to happen.
No, it ain't going to happen. So that's done. And I think any notion of any fake Arya or real Arya, because we lost Jane Poole as being the fake Arya, that whole storyline is defunct as well.
Right. And then the last one I wanted to mention, and this would be a spoiler for show watchers but not for book readers, is that it's fascinating to see what's going to happen with Ramsay. Because the way this storyline ends in the book, or ends in the last book, is he taunts Jon Snow with a letter stating that he's crushed Stannis, he's got his head on a spike, and he holds Arya, who he supposedly married, and he asks him to trade hostages, Stannis' family, and some other hostages, and that's what's going to send Jon charging back down south towards Winterfell to get involved in that fight. So how that's all going to play out with Ramsay going out to fight Stannis, we don't get the answer to that in a Dance with Dragons. So it'll be very interesting to see where that goes in the TV show.
Yeah, that is one of the huge cliffhangers with Dance with Dragons, and of course, whether or not Jon Snow lives. You know, that's a huge cliffhanger as well. So we are getting to this point, and I think it's pretty cool that the cliffhangers from A Dance with Dragons are now playing out in the show, yet the situations surrounding them are becoming very different. Although I could see whatever happens with Ramsay and Roose and at Winterfell still playing out that way. And I can, do you think it'll be Ollie that is going to lead the, I believe it was Bowen Marsh that led the insurrection against Jon Snow in the book.
It was.
Will it be Ollie? Will it be Alistair? I don't think it's going to be Alistair, but it could be Ollie. We don't know, and I'm really looking forward to that. What else happened in this issue? We got Arya. She's not Cat of the Canals. She's simply Lana, but we get a little nod to Cat of the Canals.
But I'd say the gist of that storyline is very similar. Some details changed.
They're trimming out some fat, but for the most part, it's the same thing.
Yes. But we're heading towards a place where, if you think about 2 episodes remaining, we could get to some of the same cliffhangers that we had in A Dance with Dragons could be the season cliffhangers, which would be pretty interesting.
Oh, I think so. And I think we are going to get a cliffhanger of, is Arya blind now? I think that will end up that way. I have a feeling she's going to end up killing Meryn Trent. And he's on her list. I think she's on her list. He is there with Mace Tyrell. And I think that's what's going to cause her to end up going blind. I think the show is going to make it more of a punishment / lesson.
Yeah, tie the 2 things together. Yes.
Exactly. But get somebody off of her list.
Right. But some very interesting similarities and differences. Can't help but think of how things went in the novel when you're watching the show, but both very compelling and just leaves me wanting more of both.
Agreed. I thought this was, and the changes that they make between the book and the show. For instance, Hardhome. Well, I got to lean towards the show in this one. I loved that. Loved seeing it happen on screen as opposed to off page.
Yeah, and that's something about 2 different media.
Yep.
In a TV show, you can't leave it all to the imagination. Part of the beauty of what they're doing in that show is bringing some of those things to life.
Agreed. Well, is there anything else we want to bring up?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, I think we're about done with book talk. Why don't we go ahead and get back to the show?
Now it's time for next week on Game of Thrones. So next week, season 5, episode 9, The Dance of Dragons, which is an intriguing title, written by showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who also wrote this week's episode, by the way. Directed by David Nutter, who is known for directing pilots, I read. He directed the pilots for Smallville, Supernatural, Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which starred Lena Headey, The Mentalist, Arrow, The Flash, and Supergirl. And he's also directed a few episodes of Game of Thrones, including The Reigns of Castamere, which featured the Red Wedding. Yeah.
Nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He's an episode 9 guy. Wait, that was episode 9. Yeah.
That was episode 9. Yep.
The description says Stannis confronts a troubling decision.
Ooh.
Jon returns to the Wall, which is cool to know. Mace visits the Iron Bank, which kind of surprised me. I didn't know they would show that, but I'm intrigued. Arya encounters someone from her past. You know who that's going to be. I don't.
Maybe.
Dany reluctantly oversees a traditional celebration of athleticism. Volleyball.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Fun in the beach. Did you see the scenes from next week?
I think
it was real quick.
So I'm not sure if I did or not. Actually, I think I did.
So it looked like a standoff between Jon and Sir Alistair at Castle Black.
Okay,
it looked like, because you see Jon and everybody including the giant, and then you see Sir Alistair standing up on this up high, kind of staring at him menacingly. I don't know. You see Doran, who says, presumably to Jaime, "You can swear your allegiance to me now, or you can die." I don't know if he was saying it to Jaime. You see Jaqen H'ghar say, "A girl has work to do." You see Stannis say, "If a man knows what he is, he must fulfill his destiny," which I'm not so sure that's true. Maybe. And then finally, he said, "Because what if you know that you're a really bad person? Couldn't you just skip the destiny?"
Or you just embrace it. I guess Ramsay certainly is.
That's true. That's one thing you can say about him. He's going for it with gusto. And then finally, there's this big, giant Roman-like Colosseum, And his dar is by Danny's side saying, they're waiting for you. And she claps her hands and then the crowd roars.
Nice. Yeah. I honestly don't know if I saw those or not. I've only seen the episode once, so I didn't really,
Yeah, it depends on where you see it, if they show it afterwards.
I watched it on regular HBO, so, live. So, I don't know.
I'm excited. I wonder if it's going to be in episode 9 still in the same tradition. It could still be,
Well, I have my yes, and I feel quite certain we're going to see a few things that are going to have you, next week we're going to be going, holy crap.
Nice.
So there's some good stuff coming up, and
awesome.
I have my theories as to what's going to happen in episodes 9 and 10, and I'm very excited for how the season's going to wrap up. And as a book reader who is getting out of his element, I'm really looking forward to season 6.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, that's our show, episode 12. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you want to call us, you can call us at 813-563-3739. That's 813-JOFFREY.
You can email us at game@podcastica.com.
You can check out our website at gameofmicrophones.com.
We're also on Twitter at Podcastica and on Facebook at facebook.com/Podcastica.
And be sure to check out the other first-class podcasts on our network at podcastica.com, including Under the Comic Covers and The Walking Dead Cast.
2 podcasts rather dear to both of our hearts. Next week, Game of Thrones, Season 5, Episode 9, Dance of Dragons. With hosts, David, Grace, and me, Mr. Blog.
Yay! I wanted to give you guys episode 9, the book
I
readers.
appreciate it, yeah.
Yeah, and then this happened. I'm like, oh man, I hope they didn't.
It's fine.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic.
Cool.
All right, that's our show.
Thanks for listening.
Don't forget your best coat, because winter is here.